Clash of the Champions 2 live on TBS, June 7th, 1988, in Miami, Florida, from the James L. Knight Center. As the broadcast starts, they have limousines pulling up, and they're showing first Lyle Alzado, and he's there to apparently promote his new show, Canadian-produced show, Learning the Ropes, which is the episodes I remember when the first broadcast, and then I'm watching the reruns online, was a very good show. Fictionally, and a lot of NWA wrestlers appeared on it. He was to appear as a masked wrestler, a masked maniac, who actually they did actual matches in the ring, but it was Steve Dr. Williams under a mask to portray him. It was a very good show. But the thing is, Lyle Alzado, I don't think he even appeared on the Clash of Champions 2 itself, the TBS broadcast. I don't think so. But he appears. They have limousines pulling up for what they were called dignitaries. And another person that showed up in the limousine was Gary Juster. He's a local promoter. They're in Miami, Florida. The thing is, and they're pushing the promotion of the Great American Bash 1988 pay-per-view. So they were pushing the Bash 88 pay-per-view. Gary Juster is a promoter. I'm not sure exactly where. Maybe it was something about Baltimore. I kept pushing Baltimore. I think Gary Juster is a promoter in Baltimore. But Gary Juster and another gentleman got out of the same limousine. And then another limousine, they showed up with Jim Ross talking to the Four Horsemen. And Rickler Arn Anderson, James J. Dillon. Then another limousine would pull up, would be Lex Luger in a white tuxedo. He was briefly talking, and then the Four Horsemen came and beat the living hell out of Lex Luger, tore his white tuxedo apart, because he had just turned after Stark 87. He had just turned, and then Barry Windham then joins the Horsemen, but they're still going after Luger for leaving them on his own accord. But that's the opening of the TBS broadcast, Clash of the Champions 2, Miami Mayhem from the James L. Knight Center. The opening match is Brad Armstrong, which I recently asked former magazine editor Bill Apter who was the most underrated wrestler of the 1980s, and he says Brad Armstrong. Yeah, Brad Armstrong was a very good wrestler, and he comes out of the Alabama territory. He is a second-generation wrestler. Bullet Bob Armstrong, his father, and everybody knows Road Dogg Jesse James from the WWF as his younger brother. There were a couple of different brothers of the Armstrong family, so Brad Armstrong is a well-known second-generation wrestler, and he's going to take on the newly crowned United States champion Barry Windham, who just joined the Horsemen just a month before. In April, when he, in a tag team title match, who were the tag team champions, him and Lex Luger had defeated Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson at the original First Class of the Champions in Greensboro, and then they had a defense in Jacksonville, Florida, and James J. Dillon had talked Barry Windham into leaving and saying Lex Luger wasn't around. Lex Luger had been knocked around the match in the Jacksonville, Florida match against Tully and Arn for the tag team titles. Luger was crawling all over the concrete floor, and Barry Windham had to take Tully and Arn on by himself. And he got James J. Dillon kept pushing. Barry Windham was never around for you. Well, Barry turned and joined the Horsemen, and costed him and Luger the tag team titles back to Tully and Arn, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson. So Barry Windham, new member of the Four Horsemen. Barry Windham had the new U.S. champion, won the title, the held-up U.S. title, May 13th, 1988, in Houston, Texas. The tournament is never. I don't think it's ever shown, and even in highlights. And Barry Windham had defeated Nikita Koloff in a tournament final to win the vacant U.S. title. The U.S. title had been vacated when Dusty Rhodes attacked a lot of people. Tully Blanchard with a baseball bat, because Tully had confronted a very weak and handicapped Magnum TA on TBS who was being interviewed by David Crockett, and Tully pushed Magnum down, and Dusty came out swinging with a baseball bat. He attacked everybody. He went swinging, and then they thought he's practically going to kill Tully Blanchard with a baseball bat, including Jim Crockett Jr., the owner of the company. And Jim Crockett Jr. grabbed Dusty from behind, Whether or not Dusty knew it was Jim Crockett, he took the baseball bat and backwards hit and punched Jim Crockett with the baseball bat in the gut. Jim Crockett Jr. went down. Oh boy. Yeah, hit the owner of the company. And they had a press conference, but a private meeting. They showed on video that Dusty is suspended for 90 days, I think. And he is stripped of the U.S. title. That leads Dusty Rhodes returning under a mask as the Midnight Rider, which was a character he had in Florida. Since now Dusty's no longer U.S. champion, the title is held up, vacated. Barry Windham, the new member of the Horsemen, he brings the title to the Horsemen group and he won the U.S. title in Houston, Texas, May 13th, defeating Nikita Koloff in the tournament final. Now this match, he's defending against Brad Armstrong, and a very good wrestler. It was a very good strategic match. Both guys shined in this match. It was a good, a very well fought match between the two. Both are second generation wrestlers. Barry Windham, Blackjack Mulligan's son. Even with Barry Windham, the new member of the Horsemen, one of the most funniest parts is they show many the camera is taking a look at the crowd. They do it many times. One of the first crowd members is a girl showing a sign saying and it's directed to Barry Windham, traitor. I loved it. Oh man! And many times that referee Teddy Long, and the little hair that Teddy Long had, he later he goes bald. Many times Barry Windham grabs the hair of Brad Armstrong, and they're in leg scissors and whatnot, and even so many holds. And Barry Windham, I didn't realize it the first time he did it. Barry Windham had pulled Brad Armstrong's hair, yanked him down in the leg scissors. He did the same thing. He kept pulling his hair a couple times, and then Brad Armstrong is grabbing his hair, telling the referee that he pulled my hair downward. Teddy Long's looking at the crowd. Did he pull his hair? And he makes Barry Windham let go of the hold, his leg scissors, many times. But strategically, it was almost a well-fought, even match, and both made shining comebacks back and forth. It was kind of a disappointing ending. It really, something that when Brad Armstrong went down, it was disappointing that he didn't attempt to fight back. Barry Windham uses the claw hold, his black glove claw hold, is what he learned from his father Blackjack Mulligan, who is also legendary for. The Von Erichs are also legendary for the claw hold in Texas, but he learned it from his father Blackjack Mulligan. And Barry, he puts the black glove claw hold on Brad Armstrong, and apparently Brad Armstrong passes out. Or he didn't pass out, but his shoulders went down, and Teddy Long counts to 3, and he pins Brad Armstrong, which I find a very dull, disappointing ending to that match. Brad Armstrong didn't even try to fight back, but Barry Windham pins Brad Armstrong using the black glove claw hold, and defeats him, and retains the U.S. Championship in his first opening match, Clash of the Champions 2. Before the next match, they had some arrivals. They had it before the show even started. Limousine arrivals of they called NWA promoters. Gary Juster. There was Lyle Alzado. He was apparently a former major football player. He he was going to be doing a show called Learning the Ropes, a Canadian-based show. I remember watching that show. I thought it was very good. A lot of people did not like it. There was some critical, it was negative comments about that show over the years. But I like that show. Lyle Alzado, that's what he was there to know. And he didn't even, as far as yet in the show, they haven't promoted the show. Lyle Alzado's new show. There is Gary Juster, and I'm trying to, who the heck is he? They're saying he's an NWA promoter. Apparently he was a local promoter of some sort. I've seen him in a couple shows. So people showing up there, so they call them dignitaries, limousines. Then came Lex Luger, and they had aboard one of the interviews, or one of the videos they were posting, a contract signing between Lex Luger versus Ric Flair for the world title, July 10th, I believe it was, in Baltimore. I think this is the first successful unintruded pay-per-view where Vince McMahon didn't care anymore. It was a pay-per-view live from Baltimore. And you could barely hear Flair or Luger. They signed the contract, but they said, they even called the Clash Champions 2 one of the greatest major events. I think it's something that every company does. I think even WWF did that. Even if it was a minor, it wasn't one of their major shows. They always say this is one of the greatest events in NWA history. They always amplify a show like that, no matter if it's a major or a minor show. And they were aboard. They're really pushing this. I wouldn't call it a super huge yacht owned by I think one of the Wirtz company, owner of the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm curious why they call it Chicago Blackhawks, or they called the yacht the Blackhawk, and they're in Miami. They're aboard this yacht. They pushed that one, and it did the contract signing. But then when the limousine for Lex Luger showed up, the Four Horsemen, with Barry Windham's version, kind of beat the hell out of Luger. They were tearing his white tux up, and Flair twice smacked Luger's face into the back trunk door of the limousine. And again, Luger is not a super huge bleeder. No, I guess they call it color. And he just like in the upcoming Bash '88 pay-per-view, Luger didn't bleed much. I guess he's not known for having a scarred tissue face. He isn't known for it. He didn't bleed much in the attack, but they tore the hell out of that white tux of his. They had some video promos, interviews by Jim Ross. The next match of the night was the Sheepherders U.S. Tag Team Champions versus the I'm sorry, my mistake there. U.S. Tag Team Champions, the Fantastics, versus the Sheepherders. That was a long time feud, UWF Mid-South. Sheepherders versus the Fantastics very much reminds me of the Rock and Roll Express and Midnight Express. Long time feud between the two teams. The Fantastics are, some people would vaguely say they were a rip on the Rock and Roll Express. No. Tommy Rogers, Bobby Fulton are I would never compare to them, the Rock and Roll Express. I would put the Fantastics in my top 10 favorite teams, yes. The Sheepherders, this is the better version of Sheepherders. Luke Williams, Butch Miller. Ferocious. I used to describe them that way in the Jim Crockett Memorial Tag Team Tournament I did a video of. Ferocious. I'm thinking of a better word. They're hardcore. Sheepherders were a heel team, very violent. And if you were watch the Fantastics versus the Sheepherders in a UWF TV episode, very violent, very bloody. The teams are a more violent version of the Rock and Roll Express Midnight Express match. But in this match, in the Clash Champions 2, the Fantastics defend the U.S. Tag Team title, and somehow I missed where they defeated the Midnight Express to win the U.S. Tag. I know that Midnight Express and Fantastics would trade the U.S. Tag Team title in 1988. But watching the Fantastics versus the Sheepherders, yes, it's a great match to watch. Very great, very long-paced match. Tommy Rogers takes a lot of punishment. There was one mishap I found watching this match where it wasn't much. Where I think it was Luke Williams. Tommy Rogers, he leaps over the rope and goes to drop kick Luke Williams. Luke Williams moved by a few inches, and Tommy Rogers' drop kick missed. That's just one thing I missed. It would have botched. But it was a very enjoyable match, long pace. But that's the point. They're very, very similar. They were the Mid-South UWF version of the Rock and Roll Express Midnight Express. Midnight Express are known for a lot of, especially Bobby Eaton, high-flying maneuvers and Cornette's interference. They have a flag bearer. They've had several flag bearers over their career. The Sheepherders. They've had Rip Morgan. They've had Jack Victory. They had Johnny Ace. They've had several. This one was Rip Morgan. Constantly waving that New Zealand flag. Even the crowd at one point was written USA over and over. These Sheepherders are far better to watch than where the WWF turned them into the Bushwhackers. It was more comical. They're clownish, licking kids' faces. I very dislike that version of Bushwhackers. Sheepherders, they're hardcore, ferocious, lack of a better term. It was a very enjoyable match to watch. The Fantastics defeated the Sheepherders. Bobby Fulton rolled up Luke Williams, Schoolboy roll up, and got the pin. And it's a very enjoyable match to watch between the two. It's a hardcore version of Rock and Roll Express Midnight Express match, and where Rip Morgan doesn't do it. At times the flag doesn't come into play, sort of like Cornette's tennis racket. But a very enjoyable match to watch, and Fantastics retain the U.S. tag titles, defeating the Supers. Next match of the night is the Varsity Club, headed by Kevin Sullivan, they call him the Taskmaster. His team of Mike Rotundo and Rick Steiner, and they're going to face Ron and Jimmy Garvin with Precious. The one thing I got to dispute about the Varsity Club, okay, a great combination of Mike Rotundo and Rick Steiner, both amateur wrestlers at University of Syracuse, New York, and University of Michigan, respectively. A great combination. I can understandable, and they're playing heels, but I never understood why they're managed by Kevin Sullivan. Maybe it's just the heel manager. His evil deeds, evil tasks. Kevin Sullivan being a manager, I think would be more. I think he'd been better off based out of Florida. That's where his devil character originated. I just never understood or felt that Kevin Sullivan managing Rotundo and Rick Steiner really worked. It just didn't look right for me. Now the strange thing with the announcements for this tag team match is with Ron and Jimmy Garvin, there's an announcer who is, he's not that good of an announcer, but he announces, instead of Ron Garvin and Hands of Stone, which I've always been a big fan of Ron Garvin, he calls him the Fist of Stone. What? Then with Rick Steiner and Mike Rotundo, Mike Rotundo is the current NWA World Television Champion. He announces Rick Steiner is the Varsity Heavyweight Wrestling Champion. What? I said, who's announcing this? He's not that very good. He's loosely vague. I mean, he's not that horrible. I mean, I've heard worse announcers, but no. The match is more focused on Rotundo and Steiner's their manager Kevin Sullivan, and he is locked up in a cage that's similar to what Baby Doll and Cornette were locked up to, and those two will be, or J.J. Dillon even, the small cage they're locked up would be rose in the air above the ring that we can't interfere. His cage is set at ringside, and he's not to interfere with the Garvins, but apparently he's been casting a spell of some sort. They're not going to. They very vaguely even mention if it's a possible spell that Kevin Sullivan he's vaguely using his devil worship, his material, but he has some kind of a piece of paper in his hand or something object in his hand. He keeps trying to lure Precious to the cage. Precious is holding a key to open up the cage, and Precious keeps looking at Kevin Sullivan. Kevin Sullivan says, "Come here, I got something for you," and he keeps pointing at a piece of paper. It took a while for him to lure Precious over, and also Steve Dr. Jeff Williams, who I was also a big fan of, sort of. He's a I wouldn't say copy or he was a protege, protege of Cowboy Bill Watts, who's company UWF. But Steve Williams was supposed to be they call the next generation of Bill Watts, very big man out of University of Oklahoma, and Steve Williams was at ringside commentating with Steve Williams. Steve Williams was commentating with Tony Schiavone. Steve Williams can promote for himself or a match he has. For commentating, he's not that good. Not a good talker, not an improviser, can't go along with the match. He was more focused on they call it the shocking attack by the Horsemen with J.J. Dillon. They call it a 5-on-1 attack with Lex Luger, the limousine attack. And it was focused on that we're shocked by it. But eventually, when Precious is watching the match with the Garvin, Ron and Jimmy Garvin versus Steiner and Rotundo, she's watching it, but Kevin Sullivan finally lures her toward the cage. He grabs her hands, and apparently he gets a hold of the key and out, and he's struggling. He actually when he gets out of the cage, he goes to choke her right against ringside. Jimmy Garvin got a pinfall on Rick Steiner, but he falls out of the ring, not realizing Kevin Sullivan is choking his wife Precious. Steve Williams says, "I can't take this no more." He leaves Tony Schiavone from commentary at the table and goes to attack Kevin Sullivan. This gets more stranger. And I've never seen a full show of Clash of Champions 2. This is the first time I've ever seen it. I missed the show, even the videotape that was released, and Steve Williams picks up. Steve Williams, beats up on Kevin Sullivan a little bit. Steve Williams picks up Cradles in his arms. Cradles Precious, gets in the ring, holds her. Jimmy Garvin enters. Then Precious is fighting Steve Williams, like, let go of me. He starts Precious is pushing Steve Williams away. Jimmy Garvin, Precious' husband, then she pushes Jimmy Garvin away. Everybody's in total shock. The announcers, what's Precious doing? She leaves the ring like she's under the spell of Kevin Sullivan, which this Tower of Doom they start talking about, this hard big 3-cage tier Tower of Doom, which there were other vague mentions of that other podcasts said it was a rip on. It had a Tower of Doom in World Class in Texas. Yes, they did. The Freebirds of Von Erichs were involved in that, and I don't know whether or not the NWA knew that there was a copy. Probably they did, but it's leading to Kevin Sullivan's Tower of Doom, and Precious will be holding the key to that cage. But this was a strange match. But the Garvins defeated Rick Steiner and Mike Rotundo. Jimmy Garvin pinned Rick Steiner. But it was a big thing with Precious and Kevin Sullivan, where Precious apparently is now under the spell, and she pushes everybody away, walks off. It was more of the big deal about Precious rather than the match itself. Next match of the night is Nikita Koloff versus Al Perez with manager Gary Hart. Now, I think most will agree with that 1988 was not a year for Nikita Koloff, despite the fact he had a world title match in the third Crockett Cup versus Ric Flair. And he had, apparently he's having this feud now with Al Perez, who is now, pretty new to the NWA and Crockett area. Nikita Koloff looked absolutely so weak with now he's growing hair. He's lost his body muscle, his upper build. He looked so awesome. He had an upper build. The muscles, he looked so muscular that 1985, 1986, 1987. Many fans have said that, despite the fact he looked good with as a Superpowers teaming up with Dusty Rhodes, but as the year ended and then he had the unification TV title match with Terry Taylor at Starrcade 87, he began going downhill. He was weaker. His body mass, the growing the hair. All those years, I think many of us believed he was a real Russian, and Russians spoke that way. And not until he turned religious, he started on these religious based shows that we even learned that he was an American. But anyway, we had to breaking kayfabe. But 1988 was not a great year for Nikita. His growing hair, he looked more American. I think it was eroding the Russian persona. And even when in the first Clash of Champions, he had an interview wearing a white tuxedo. He was talking his Russian at his so-called as an accent. Him and Ivan called for one of the best sold Russian gimmicks in history of wrestling. But it was after his face turned, teaming with Dusty, but it was after that. I think it was after 1987. Going in 88, I think everyone would agree that his bald head was part of his persona, and when he grew the hair, and he looked a lot weaker, and his body mass, his muscles really declined. The match with Al Perez. Now, Al Perez, Bob Caudle announcing, called him relentless. He was a very good wrestler. I think that the match between Al Perez and Nikita Koloff was very evenly matched. If Nikita had his far larger muscular build, I think he would look so impressive against Al Perez. I never paid attention to Al Perez when I was younger. When I first watched as a teen, Yes, he looks very impressive in this match. It was evenly fought. Then comes Gary Hart. Never really interfered. He's a good talker. Then all of a sudden comes Gary Hart. Then no, it was whom interfered. Someone charges the ring. I wasn't sure who it is. He's all in a black suit and pants and shirt. He entered. I couldn't tell who it was at first. But the moment this person interfered, then Gary Hart takes his jacket off, puts it over Nikita's head, and starts strangling him in a corner. Then it was Tony Schiavone said, "Is Larry Zbyszko? What the heck does Larry Zbyszko got to do with Gary Hart and Miguel Perez? That's their team. He's part of a stable. I never paid attention to Larry Zbyszko. And Larry Zbyszko showed up. He upset Barry Windham for the Western States title at the Bunkhouse Stampede pay-per-view, and that was the biggest upset. I couldn't figure that one out, because why are you changing a Western States title in the East Coast in Long Island, New York? What? Well, so Larry Zbyszko, unless he's joined Gary Hart's stable, what did he have to do with Nikita Koloff? Unless he's going to start a new feud. But the match between Al Perez and Nikita Koloff, Al Perez looked a lot more impressive. As Bob Cotto would say, he looked relentless. Nikita looked a lot weaker. His body mass, his muscle build, the hair looked a lot weaker. And no, Nikita won by disqualification because of Larry Zbyszko and Gary Hart's interference. And it was an okay match. But I said Al Perez looked a lot more impressive than Nikita Koloff did. Alright, the main event ending the show for Clash of the Champions 2 was a Tag Team Championship match. Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson defending against Sting and Dusty Rhodes. And one of the announcers pointed out that Sting and Dusty Rhodes are practically a new combination. I've always heard it over the years that Sting, I wouldn't say trained, because he was originally a bodybuilder and he teamed up with Jim Hellwig with Ultimate Warrior. But when he came to UWF, I got a question: who was his original tag team partner? Who trained Sting? I gotta look that up. But they've always said that in a phrase, Sting was Dusty's boy. No, that he took him under his wing. Wait, Dusty trained Barry Windham. Barry Windham was growing up with him, and when Dusty was close friends with Blackjack Mulligan, and so they raised Barry Windham. Dusty trained Barry Windham. Same thing with Sting. I'm saying Dusty trained Sting, but they've always heard the phrase Sting was Dusty's boy that he took Sting under his wing. So it wasn't his usual tag team combination, but they shined for a while against the Horsemen. Yeah, you always love watching Dusty Rhodes. I was always a huge fan of Dusty Rhodes. Dusty's hand jive, the way he rolls his hand, and his bionic elbow. He's such a great arsenal, but everyone knows he's most charismatic. And it's amazing that he could carry himself 30 minutes to an hour with his body weight. He's just truly amazing, and the things that Dusty has created over the years, Starrcade, Great American Bash, all these things. It was a fairly good match for the main event, and but then suddenly interference. Before the interference, that the match started getting out of control. Sting kind of pushed or grabbed Teddy Long. That happened before. That the Fantastics, Bobby Fulton. I think it was I think the first Clash show that Bobby Fulton threw referee Teddy Long. This match, Sting pushes Teddy Long out of the way. Should have been disqualification. Dusty does the same thing. He pushes Teddy Long out of the way. So Sting and Dusty should have been disqualified. Then Barry Windham and full dress tuxedo outfits or just suits. They jump Sting and Barry Windham. Barry Windham goes to jump Dusty Rhodes, puts the claw on him, his black glove claw. And then it's pretty much double disqualification. It was labeled double disqualification or no contest. It was a Horseman attack on Dusty and Sting, and they were promoting the Great American Bash. So it's going to be eventually Dusty Rhodes and Barry Windham. That's how Clash of the Champions 2 ends. The Horsemen 4-on-2 attack, where Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson are still the champions. Still tag team champion. This match ends in a double disqualification, and it's Barry Windham putting his black glove claw on Dusty. That's how it ends. No contest. But I will have to say the Clash of Champions 2 was far more interesting and exciting than Clash of Champions 1. I really have to say that. I was kind of bored by Clash of Champions 1. Except for the Sting Ric Flair 45-minute draw. That was the standout match. Everything else, it seemed boring. Clash of Champions 2 had a lot more, shocking and unexpected moments, and that's what Jim Crockett Promotions was beginning to financially fail. They always said 1988, but Clash of Champions 2 had a lot more shocking, unexpected things that we remembered all those years, and especially with the Four Horsemen attack. And they said that the Barry Windham's version, Barry Windham joining the Horsemen, that was a far better version of the Horsemen. That's why they were later inducted in the Hall of Fame. The attack on Dusty Rhodes and Sting, it was very vicious. It was not much, but it was more Barry Windham going after Dusty Rhodes, and they did talk about the Luger attack. Luger attack wasn't much, not really. There's been far more brutal attacks by the Horsemen, but that's how Clash of Champions 2 closes. World Tag Team Champions Sullivan and Arn Anderson and Sting and Dusty Rhodes, the challengers, are both disqualified after the Horsemen attack, despite that Dusty and Sting should have been disqualified for attacking referee Teddy Long first. If you like this video, please subscribe, comment, like or dislike, and thank you for watching.